Welcome to AP Taylor Swift, the podcast for Swifties with English degrees or those who just like to overanalyze everything. I'm Jody.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Monty.
And we are your unofficial professors of Taylor Swift. Welcome back to AP Taylor Swift. Before we get into today's show and tell episode, as always, some class announcements. If you're looking for some book recommendations, head over to our bookshop page, bookshop.org/shop/APTS. We've got lots of recommendations organized by episode, by topic. We even have some more general recommendations. So if you like debut, some books that you might like based on which era of Taylor Swift you're in. So head to our bookshop page and take a look for some inspiration on your next book. All right. With that, today's topic for our show and tell is royalty. To give us a little bit of a primer on royalty, or at least to just frame our conversation, Jen, you did some extra credit. You want to give us some background?
I did. Royalty has been a fun topic. I think we've all enjoyed researching our songs, but it's also an interesting topic in that I don't think it needs that much of an introduction. I think we're pretty safe to say most of our listeners are aware of this concept. But what I did want to do, and I'm going to give a vague answer to this, but I wanted to research the origins of it, of is this as old as humanity? Have we always done this? And I discovered quickly that that's a complicated question. So go out and do your own research. I think there was some interesting stuff out there. But at a high level, the answer is, yeah, this is about as old as humanity as far as we are aware. There are some debates about who it was, but I saw multiple sources saying that the first recorded king, essentially, was in ancient Sumeria in 2500-ish BC. So about as old as recorded human history. There are records of some sort of ruler, king, something. I'm sure they had different names. Obviously, language changes, but that it is really, really old. And some of the sources too are saying also, by the way, this is also outside of different religious origin stories, that most religions also have royalty in how humans were created or the earth was created. So the idea of a ruler of some sort is ingrained into humanity, which is really interesting, I think.
I think it's interesting that you brought up religion, because I think in some of my research too, I was seeing that at some point, if you go far enough, it is so closely intertwined. Yes, we've had rulers for as old as recorded history, but the distinction between religion or religious belief and the ruler the lines become blurry, because in many instances the rulers were religiously ordained, or there was some concept of divine right. So sometimes it does get blurry.
Yeah, and I'll definitely talk about it a little bit more in my song too, but the idea of how you become a ruler has multiple different paths, but religion has always played some sort of role in it, even in modern royalty. It's still, they may not claim it now, but modern royals, their ancestors did claim some sort of divine right for pretty much the most part. So it's you cannot unbraid that braid. Those things are very tightly, closely together.
I mean, I could get political with my questions around the origins of royalty, but I think we may in our discussions of these songs. But I feel like something we'll also see is the different perceptions of royalty from a storybook form and how it goes in that direction, royalty from, high school and, prom king, prom queen. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different directions that you can take the metaphor and the symbolism of royalty in, and maybe that's just a good place to start and see where we go.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say is I genuinely don't know if it has nothing to do with my song, so I don't know if it'll come up in your guys' songs, but it dawned on me right before we started recording too that royalty has two definitions. Yes, Ooh. It is by blood, fate, status, whatever. It's the ruling person or family of a kingdom, but it's also the money paid to an inventor or an artist when their work is used.
Oh, yeah. Hey. Reasons why
I don't
Taylor's
think that
songs were removed from TikTok.
I was I don't know if that's why, the metaphors used in our songs, but, it feels incredibly relevant when talking about any artist to remember the idea of royalty is, there's two things going on there. And I was that's kind of fun. Yes.
That is a fun little tidbit there. Well,
so we can kick it off.
I'm doing the first song today. I'm doing Long Live. I think it's a little bit of an obvious one when it comes to royalty. There's lots of royal references, which we'll go through. But the song came out first in 2010. It was on Speak Now. And true to my streak, it is written only by Taylor Allison Swift. I don't know when the streak will end.
You are consistent.
I'm very consistent. I chose this song because, first of all, it was one of my favorite songs in the Eras tour. I was lucky enough to actually see this one live, both in 1989 tour and Eras tour. And then I think she did in Reputation as well. And it's just like an awesome, awesome song. Very epic. But there's definitely some really key things that come up that tie it to royalty. For one thing, she straight up calls out a kingdom. All the kingdom lights shine just for me and you. There is a reference of the title itself, Long Live, is a phrase that was coined in some context with royalty, which I'll go over in a second. And then I think we even have mention of traded your baseball cap for a crown. We are the kings and the queens being the most explicit. So definitely throughout this song, a lot of royalty references. One thing that I thought was really interesting was as I was going through the lyrics for one of her earlier songs, it has a lot of lyrics. Like it's not just repetitive.
What is
like,
okay, I see.
You get what I'm saying? Like in some of her later music, she tends to be like smarter with the lyrics.
In red, it gets a little bit more repetitive. I feel like that's about the transition from country to pop.
Maybe, but
more than anything.
Speak Now was 2010, and I think just like thinking about other songs on Speak Now, I don't think they were all as lyrically sophisticated.
Enchanted? I mean, I don't think we've ever referenced Enchanted this early in the podcast.
I feel like in some of her earlier songs, though, the choruses were longer, so the verses were shorter. So the choruses were like longer and repeating, and the verses were a little bit shorter. And this one is like all
long
verse.
Yeah.
So much verse. The chorus is actually pretty short.
Yeah, and the chorus, exactly. Like the chorus is pretty short, and I actually think the verse it's definitely in that tradition of Enchanted's storytelling. And same kind of like with Love Story, but even Love Story felt like it had like specific parts, and this one is like one long narration, a
lot of story, a lot of narrative.
Which to me, in one way, kind of reminds me of the epic, a format in which kings and queens were often written about was ballads or epics. And I think this song kind of has some formula that kind of is reminiscent of that, which is really interesting because she's telling you about like going down in history, a moment that will be remembered, kind of immortalizing one's name. And so I thought it was just really interesting where the form kind of reflects potentially the context that we're talking about. I'll pause just to get some of your thoughts, and then I would love to like dive into some of the origins of things like kingdoms, Long Live, and then the king and queen references. But initial thoughts for you guys?
I listened to all of our songs before we record, like as I'm getting ready and stuff to like get me in the feeling. And first of all, I will warn everyone, I will be connecting every single song today to Lord of the Rings. It will happen, and we're just going to start right here. But when I think of royalty, I often think of like fantasy. Like there's just so much royalty in like fantasy literature. And so that's where my mind went. But this song in particular was just giving me that feeling of at like the end of a big epic fantasy story where there's always like that moment of celebration of like good defeated evil. And it kind of made me think of just like the feeling of like Aragorn's coronation. And then everyone is bowing to the hobbits and it's, the kids in ripped up jeans, like that kind of feeling of like, for a moment, like we did it. We did something incredible and we're going to remember this forever. It is that royalty though, too, in that scene, which is why it really reminded me of its epics thing. It's incredible. We did it. You held your head like a hero. It was the end of the decade. It was the start of the age. The right people are in charge. Like it's just like everything's coming together for this moment. And so it reminded me of that scene, but all fantasy endings, really.
I'm going to be very on brand for me. This reminded me of Newsies, the musical Newsies.
Oh, do you like musicals? We've never mentioned that before.
I've never mentioned that before. Huh. But similar to you, like, what is the image that this conjures in my head? And for me, it's them all gathering together and, fighting the big bad newspaper company. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen Newsies.
Company.
It's been a while. Don't take it from me. Just watch the musical. It's really fun. There's a song, King of New York, which also royalty. Hello.
Hey.
So it's interesting. So your reference point for royalty is fantasy novels. Mine is the British royal family because I'm a bit of an Anglophile. When I started looking at songs and looking through the songs we've all picked, I thought from, that perception of royalty. But then when I started listening to this song, I felt more high school vibes than anything else. We were the kings and the queens. They read off our name. You dance like you know. I just felt prom. I felt prom vibes. We never had a prom king and prom queen in my high school. I know we've gone over this before. I went to an atypical high school. No football, no prom king, no prom queen. It's fine. But that's part of the feeling that I got from this song. Although I think it weaves in and out of storybook royalty and high school royalty, and it brings those two together really nicely.
Yeah, it definitely feels very, I also think a lot of the British monarchs, but I would not associate their stories with this happy of a song necessarily throughout history. I did at one point have Queen Victoria's whole family tree up while I was researching for this, and I was like, I don't need this information, but
we can do that when we get to my song. Maybe it's my
Perfect.
song.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question because it helps me also kind of like ground the conversation, because I was curious. And one thing that I was thinking of in terms of royalty was actually the medieval royalty, or like the traditional royalty that you think of when you think of just old Europe. Yes,
like the Medicis,
but even like, I mean, I think a lot of us think of British royalty, but like there's some overlap. Like, where does the fantasy royalty and actual royalty kind of like intersect? And a lot of that is actually in the medieval times, is what like people draw from. It existed in real life, but it has been fantasized. And I think this song definitely hits across all of them, whether it's intentional or not. But we can start maybe with the title, which long live is a phrase that definitely we hear in the British monarchy. For better or for worse, we got to witness the Queen's passing in our lifetimes, and the British monarchy had this concept of, to make sure that there's no downtime where there's no monarch, they would go immediately from the last monarch to the new monarch by saying, the king is dead, long live the king. Or the queen is dead, long live the king. Or the king is dead, long live the queen. And it was always said in the same breath to say the old monarch has passed away and the new one, may the new one live long. That phrase was actually, it dates back to the 1400s with Charles the Seventh. His father died, and the son, Charles VII, became king. And I thought that was really interesting that that's kind of where this phrase started. 1400s was very much in the Middle Ages, that we would say. And it was originally a French term, came into English, and has been popularized through every monarch since in that tradition. So just that title and that phrase, I think like starting with that is kind of an ode to like that Middle Age tradition and very much British royalty. But in addition to
Can I
that,
add two pieces of context to that too for the long live? First off, so the romanticizing of the medieval royalty was very much a Victorian thing. The medieval royalty itself was actually incredibly bloody and violent. Highly recommend the book, The Plantagenets by Dan Jones. He does a really good job of going through basically the royal family in England leading up to right before the Tudors. So like Henry VIII, you have the War of the Roses, which leads to Henry Tudor. So how did we get to the War of Roses is basically that book. So the long live, to me, like the king is dead, long live the king, though, to me has always been, it's a like an immediate stake of loyalty, because if you are on the wrong side, it is not going to go well for you. Like it was very bloody. People would take over and then they would kill everyone who was supporting the previous king. So saying the king is dead, long live the king is kind of a like, the king is dead, but like, yay, you're in charge now. And like, we're all happy about it. I think that that's a part of it too. But also King Arthur too is the once and future king. That is a very big part of that mythology that I think weaves into this too.
Yes, I definitely saw King Arthur vibes in this. One thing also is that King Arthur
Yes.
was a knight first, or he's known as being a knight,
Knight
having
of the Round
Knights
Table.
of the Round Table, and fighting for many, many years on behalf of Rome. And like fighting dragons is a big part of this song. It's long live the magic we made. I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you. And I was like, who fights dragons? I mean, dragons are mythological creatures. This is where we're walking into fantasy. But there are actually, I was like, do kings fight dragons? Do knights fight dragons? I think in most fantasies today, in most fantasy lore, tradition can kind of go back to J.R.R. Tolkien as well, but he also had different creatures. Typically, it's the knight in shining armor that is rescuing some distressed damsel, but fighting off a dragon in the armor. This could be a biblical reference as well, where there was a king or a saint originally fighting a dragon.
St. George.
Exactly. And so
Sure.
I think you have some, I think there's like a little bit of that, but I thought of King Arthur because he was both a knight and a king. And in this song, you have this idea that somebody traded the baseball cap for a crown, or somebody who wasn't supposed to be king became king. The normal ascension is like, oh, someone's son became king. But in this situation, we really feel like the king and queen ended up there from like a popularity vote somehow.
And that's where I get the relationship between royalty and high school, right? Like we were on the sidelines of all, like I said, to the second verse, I said, remember this feeling. I passed the pictures around of all the years that we stood there on the sidelines wishing for right now. We are the kings and the queens. You traded your baseball cap for a crown when they gave us our trophies and we held them up for our town. So I agree with you, Monty. It's that, except that King Arthur was not on the sidelines. He was very much in the middle of it all.
Oh,
I'm wrong.
I
Okay.
debate that.
Go
So
for
it depends.
My King Arthur references come from like Monty Python Spam-A-Lot. That's the most recent time. So go for it. Give me the academic.
I'm very lucky that one of the most prominent Arthurian scholars teaches at Purdue, so I got to learn the Arthurian legend from her.
Okay, so
she was awesome.
Retract my previous statements.
Well, it depends. The interesting thing about Arthur is there's multiple legends.
Yes. Okay.
And we should do a whole Arthurian legend like themed episode.
I think this is the Arthurian legend.
I'm going to try to not go too deep into it, but most of the legends, he was born of some sort of royal blood, but he was taken away to be raised by a different family. So he was raised not in the court. He wasn't even raised as a knight. He was technically raised as a squire, I believe, in most of them, where you like assist a knight. And it's not until he pulls the sword from the stone. But for historical purposes too, there is a potential like real King Arthur, not to the same mythological proportions, but England was being invaded quite a bit by essentially Vikings. And there was, I think his name was Alfred, but there was a real king who, there was no unified Britain at the time, but there were different like tribes and groups, and there was a king who unified them.
It was Alfred.
It was Alfred, right? Okay.
I'm going to make a plug for everyone to go watch The Last Kingdom on Netflix if you have not. Like the greatest show in the history of all TV.
There are so many things I wish I watched to prepare for this. The Sword in the Stone. I wish I rewatched Monty Python Spam-A-Lot. Sure, The Last Kingdom. Thank you for explaining that King Arthur was a legend, but also based on a real king. Because I'm not going to lie, when you were going to the whole thing, I was like, wait a second, is this real or is this not real? I know nobody actually fought dragons, but thank you for...
Yeah, and I mean, like, they didn't fight dragons, but they probably did fight pretty nasty beasts. Or, you know, the story of a big epic battle gets developed. It is interesting, too. I promise, this is not the last thing I say. I was going to say, I promise, it's not. But
it's never.
Beowulf also fought a dragon. That's actually how Beowulf dies at the end of Beowulf. That's Anglo-Saxon, so more like Viking-ish lore. A good king should die in battle, but when you get into more medieval Europe, a good king needs to create a dynasty, needs to create a lineage. And so that's why it's the knight in shining armor that does the battle, because Arthur needs to stay home and stay safe and make sure he has kids and raises a family. It was probably Lancelot and the other knights at the Round Table who would be the ones going off and fighting the dragons, because their lives are important but less important than the king's. So Arthur should have proven himself in battle, but then settled down and created stability.
And Jody, I
Wow.
definitely, the high school reference is 100% there in this song. And so I
Yeah.
think we definitely need to get to the prom king and queen.
I love the way she brings it together.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that we didn't mention that I also think is a part of this in terms of people who maybe shouldn't have become royalty who ascend to that level. Robin Hood was another character that I thought of recently. She mentions bandits. We were, what is the line?
A band of thieves.
A band of thieves. And it's like this popularity thing of everyone singing. Robin Hood is a legend that dates back to the rule of King Richard, when King Richard went off on the crusade. Richard the Lionheart, King John was in charge, and King John sucked. I don't remember what his moniker was or his nickname, but he was not liked at all.
He's the reason we got the Magna Carta, because everyone was so mad they forced him to sign something that gave away some of his power because he was so... They had like the divine right of God to
I'm
rule.
learning more from this podcast than I did in history, or maybe it's just been so long and this is a really good refresher. So thank you.
This is also my era, so this I was going to be a medievalist, so this is where I'm thriving.
Jen is in her medieval era all the time.
It's not too late for us, Jen. We can still do it. But I will say
PhD.
Yeah, I just, Robin Hood was like, steal from the rich, give to the poor. I think Robin Hood did have some actual connections in the royal family. He was well connected. Certainly, like the legends of Robin Hood and Maid Marian, like she was a part of the royal family. I think she was Richard the Lionheart's niece, and I am only saying that because I recently rewatched the Disney version of Robin Hood, so that's where that information's coming from. and anyway,
the original source material,
obviously.
The two cute little foxes. Anyway, all this to say that, like, I think this very cleverly, this song has a mix of, you have Arthurian legend, you have this like Robin Hood kind of lore. We are referencing the Middle Ages, like you're very cleverly throughout this song referencing a number of old things, classic tales, all to potentially tell us a story about high school. Because you're right, at like the traded the baseball cap for a crown, and just some of the language really does
ripped up jeans.
Yeah, is there something about a rock band, I believe, or like
it's the Band of Thieves?
Oh, it's just a band of thieves. Maybe I thought of like a high school band, but you really do get this image of like some outcasts or some students who have done something really great, and their name is going down in high school legend because they are doing something epic, and they're selected by their student body or like elevated to that level of fame, heroism, to the point that she's comparing herself to kings and queens.
There's a moment of recognition, like,
yeah,
it's about being recognized even though you're not usually the people who are recognized.
Isn't that the dream, like, to get that level of like, yeah, we did it for our school, we did it for our town?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's where the Lord of the Rings comparison did work really well for me, because it's the point of the
read Lord of the Rings, so okay. I really can't contribute, but go ahead. I trust you.
So at the end of the day, it was tiny little hobbits who no one cares about, no one thinks about, who literally saved the world. It wasn't the king. It wasn't the incredibly skilled elf. Like, it wasn't all these people who you would say, that's the hero. It was these tiny little creatures who love to eat and love to hang out and love to chill. But they had that bravery. They did something incredible. They literally saved the world. And that's like the whole point of The Lord of the Rings, is that good can come from anywhere, and that you don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be, but being the bravest has nothing to do with what skills you have or like how strong you are. It's based on the choices you make. And I think that that's kind of what's happening here, is you don't have to be popular to do something incredible.
For me, it's giving the end of the first Harry Potter, when, you know, they did all the things in that wasn't the Chamber of Secrets. This was the first one. Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone. Yeah, well, they have to do the chess game, and Hermione has to do what's the plant?
She does the In the movie she's a plant. In the book, it's a potions like puzzle.
Thank you. Clearly, I watched the movie and haven't read the book yet, so sorry. But anyway, at the very end, like the whole Great Hall has all the Slytherin colors because they had the most points. But then Dumbledore gets up and is like, "Nope, 50 points for Hermione for her wisdom." For 50 points for Ron for his strategy, and then 10 points for Neville for standing up to his friends when that is the hardest thing you could do. And then Gryffindor wins, and I think they should be singing this song at the end.
And then Dumbledore gives 2 middle fingers to the Slytherin table and Moon walks away. And that's basically how the books go. That's how I see that scene. But yes, I know what you mean. But yes, where it's that.
But it's that feeling. I think we're all talking about the song capturing a feeling of the underdogs, the people who were not expected to rule or win or succeed, be the ones that are recognized for success.
That's kind of the key. It's that unexpected hero is the trend. It's not the person who is just supposed to inherit the throne. It's the person who nobody expected. That's so standard in the archetypical hero arc. It's somebody, the least likely person to do the thing is the person that gets to actually do the thing, and they get the credit, and therefore they are fully deserving of that title and that love because they earned it. It wasn't handed to them. That's like what makes it a hero.
Right.
So anyways, loaded song. We could probably do an incredible deep dive on this some other time, and we will come back to it, but this is not our deep dive song for today. So with that, let's kick it over to the next song.
You're a podcast listener, so audio is clearly your medium. Did you know that you can buy audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookshop? Libro FM lets you pick from more than 450,000 audiobooks. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as that large audiobook company out there, but you'll be supporting your local bookshops instead. We have our own playlist of recommended books, find it in our show notes, and as an AP Taylor Swift listener, you can get 2 audiobooks for the price of 1 with your first month of membership. Use code APTS to claim your special offer and check out the books we think Swifties will love at the link in our show notes.
All right. I have the next song, and we definitely debated whether or not this song should go next or last, because I have a vault track. And I think this is the first vault track that we're actually covering on the podcast.
I think you're right.
I think so. Won't be the last. So I chose Castles Crumbling, Taylor's version, from the vault. And this is from Speak Now, Taylor's version, that came out in 2023. So it's a vault track. So it is track 20 on Speak Now, Taylor's version, and written by Taylor Swift herself. And I picked it for the obvious reason. It's called Castles Crumbling. This is an episode on royalty, and I went literal. But what I think is really interesting, and I'd love to discuss how both Long Live and Castles Crumbling are on the same album, because this is about the negative sides. This is all that takes the royal imagery, and it's about negative. It's about it's using that imagery to describe a downfall, literally like castles crumbling. And she really builds it up right from the very beginning. Once I had an empire, and that gets repeated before we go into the actual first verse. And so you really get this sense right from the beginning that we are comparing where somebody is now to where they once were, and that there has been a dramatic fall. Once I had an empire. And it really built it up. Once I had an empire in a golden age, I was held up so high. I used to be great. They used to cheer when they saw my face. Now I fear I have fallen from grace. So right up front, we're set up to climb, and fall straight down. Except it's not necessarily that she actually fell. It's I fear I've fallen from grace. So this is a very internal song. This is, to me, an internal monologue where it's very introspective. And basically the story is I used to be great, something changed, and now people hate me. And that's the gist of the song. But it uses this royal imagery to describe the fall. Castles crumbling, power went to my head, sit alone behind walls. My reign has ended. They're screaming at palace gates. Like, those are the royal moments, and they're all negative. So again, I go back to like the distinction, the difference between Long Live, where Royal was very positive and something that they had aspired to, that they got this recognition, and here it's Fallen. And so I'm almost like, was this written right after I feel like it was written after Long Live, where she felt like she was on top of the world, and then something happened, and now the castles are crumbling.
I think it's so interesting that this one is a Volt track and came out later, because later in her catalog, she does use some similar references.
Yes.
Like Castles Crumbling, to me, I just think of Call It What You Want. My castles crumbled overnight. And then even Bridges Burned, like obviously You're on Your Own Kid has like, there were bridges burned, and
Yep.
a lot of that imagery repeats in later music. So it's so interesting to hear those kind of references.
Where it started.
So, also makes me think of like, those later songs might be referencing this moment, or like this is how early it was when it started. How do you go from such a high with Long Live to such a low that you keep talking about for years, and then that recovery and climb out of that?
Well, and two, I think this, to me, there's a lot of things, but sticking with the royalty side first, Long Live is the fantasy of royalty. Castles crumbling is the reality of ruling. Ruling a kingdom's hard. It's very political. If we get into any of it, like if you want to know why there's, the Plantagenet line was so bloody, why so many, being the king or being the queen was not, you may have the right bloodline, but it wasn't always a guarantee. There are a lot of powerful people who had to support you. Like you had to get the right support. You had to maintain it. You had to make sure everyone was happy. It was not as simple as, oh, you did it. You won. Great. Now you're in charge forever. Like there's so much more that goes on. I think I was just, before we started recording, was telling Jody about the series, the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas is very much a like fantasy world building thing. And it kind of got into that in a way I hadn't seen it, where there's a woman who is definitely the heir to the throne and has the power, like has everything that is there, but she still has to get the support in order to like take her rightful place. And I think that that's just something, it's interesting to me that it's a vault track, because we were talking about this too, of like, well, she wrote it at the time, but she may have revisited it or revised it over the years, because it feels to me like the difference between like, I'm going to make it about career. It feels to me like the difference of like, oh, I want to get that promotion, I want to get that job, and then like you're finally in charge of something and you're like, oh, this is not fun sometimes. Like, why did I want to come here?
I literally said to my manager this week, leadership is a trap. It's a trap.
Where it's that like, I would never do that as a manager. Then you're a manager and you're like, oh gosh, I might have to do that. Maybe I'm not going to be popular or whatever.
I'm glad I've rubbed off on you. I too see this as a career song. For the newer Swifties in our realm, welcome. So
our kingdom.
Contextually, in our kingdom, hello, there you go. This song was, so Speak Now came out in 2010. In 2009, I believe, is when you had the whole Kanye West incident where he interrupted her on stage and she was accepting an award. And that was kind of the first time she had this moment of like, oh shit, people don't like me. And she thought they were all booing her. They were booing Kanye, but still it created this feeling. And there was a lot of, stuff in the media about, is she really that good? And other people who don't like her. So I presume, I have no, my presumption is that this song takes place after that. And I relate this song to a career. I once had an empire. I was held up so high they used to cheer. Now I've fallen. Once I was the great hope. Crowds would hang on to my words. Their faith was strong. Now I held a grudge, tore me apart, right? So I see this as a story written about her career.
It also reminds me a bit too, I always do one out there pop culture reference. It reminds me of Frozen, actually, of Elsa. And the second she shows power that is a little bit scary, people freak out and are like, no. And I think, to me too, I definitely see that. But I also think if this was the fact that Hayley Williams sings this with Taylor, to me, it becomes this broader story of like female success and how it's not tolerated for very long. Think about like it girls. You know, you can be an it girl for like a couple of years, but you can't be one for too long. Or there was I remember when some like news story came out about like how Hilary Duff looked incredible at 35 and everyone was shocked by it. And it's like, yeah, she's just continuing to live her life, that women have such a short window to be successful, that it's, when you've hit that point and the tolerance is over, it's anything's ready to knock it down, to crumble that castle, to have people will pivot so quickly from being a fan to being screaming. And like we've seen it with Taylor very,
Right.
very specifically. But the fact that Hayley Williams is there too just feels like this is she connected to it. I remember I like saw an interview with Hayley Williams where she said that Taylor originally sent her a different song, and she was like, it's a great song. It's not one that really fits with like where I'm at right now. And then Taylor sent her this song and she was like, absolutely. So I feel like there's a definitely a gender situation here too.
For sure.
You know, people look at me like I'm a monster now. They're screaming at the palace front gates, used to chant my name. The hatred women get.
And how quickly it
screaming
turns.
at the palace. Yeah, how quickly it turns from chanting the name to screaming at the palace front gates.
My foes and my friends watch my reign end. It's not just the people who hate me, it's the people who also loved me. And it's, I can see how that would feel like the castles are crumbling, everything is over. And I also just love the line, and I watch all my bridges burn to the ground. You know, burning a bridge means you're ending a relationship. She paints a very vivid picture. Castles are crumbling, bridges are burning, but it also means you're ending a relationship of some kind. And that's the other thing that I don't think we brought up yet, but like she has a line at the end of the chorus, you don't want to know me now. Like, you don't want to know me. I will just let you down. You don't want to know me. And I go back to what you said, Monsi, in Long Live about the you being plural. Here, I wonder, is the you plural? She's talking more broadly to fans, groups of people, or is there, when I think of burning bridges, it's usually from between two people. And so I'm like, oh, is this about a person? Is this about like my world's falling apart and I can't be in this relationship with you. You don't want to know me now. I've burned that bridge. I don't know.
I also think it's interesting. There's a couple places for it, but I'll just go to one of the lines. Power went to my head and I couldn't stop. Ones I loved tried to help, so I ran them off. And here I sit alone behind walls of regret, falling down like promises that I never kept.
That's
It
Elsa.
is interesting. I mean, also, well,
So Elsa.
100%. Like, literally, she couldn't stop her powers. But also, just this. We've talked about this in the satire episode of this calculating image, this like playing the game. And that's absolutely not what's happening here. The idea of this is like, I like did it. I won. I got the castle. I got the crown. And then things didn't go well. And this, is it Taylor? Is it every woman? Whoever it is, the speaker of this didn't continue playing the political game. They were not trying to like gather support and it was just to like just shut everyone out and was like, I don't want to play this game. Like, I'm not going to do this. And again, that's very gendered of, oh no, did I do something wrong? Am I doing this poorly? Should I have not done this? Versus like, no, I earned this spot. How do I fight to keep it? That just feels very gendered to me as well.
I think the other thing that we talked about in Long Live was we talked about somebody who like didn't get naturally ascended to the throne, but they like potentially were the underdog or the least expected person to get the throne. And that introduces a lot of rockiness. And then in this song, you have a lot of that like crashing down. I love the like female take on it and like the gendered take, but it's like, obviously if somebody wasn't supposed to be there, or if it was like a least expected version to be there, you have more enemies and you have more detractors. And I mean, I like the female angle because it's like you're not always the one that people are rooting for, or you have more to lose when you're the kind of underdog. So anyways, that's an interesting angle.
Yeah, and Taylor even said in the Miss Americana documentary of like, I'll keep doing this as long as society tolerates this level of success. I highly doubt male artists have that thought in their head of how long is society going to tolerate this success. I like just saw something about how like Martin Scorsese is going to make his last film with Brad Pitt, and they've been working together since like the 1990s. And I'm like, neither one of them have ever thought of, I hope society will let me keep making art. That would be a bummer if they didn't. Like, that's not a thought they have, you know?
Yeah, and she's got a lot of songs. It's interesting to see how early in her discography, in her career, she's talked about maybe this being the end. Like, this is her third album, but then she comes up again on Red, Taylor's version, the vault song Nothing New, where she thinks that, somebody else is going to come along and be better than me. It comes up again and again, but I think this is the earliest that we see it. And she's like 20 years old when she wrote this. So she is very much at the beginning of her career. But to your point, Jen, like, yeah, the career longevity for men versus women is very, very different.
And I mean, like, the way, even if we want to go historical too with royalty, like the way Elizabeth I stayed in power.
Royalty. Hello.
She played the game. Like, she never got married, but she pretended to get engaged like a ton of times and would like court suggestions and would make alliances and all of that kind of stuff. And that was like, I mean, she did bad things, I mean, obviously, but she's still like, it's really interesting to think about how much work she had to put into interpersonal, like, strategic interactions. Every single person she talked to doubted that she could be queen, that she could be a ruler in her own right. Everyone wanted her to get married, to get a king, to put a man in charge. And yet the legacy of Elizabeth I is insane. Like, no one questions that in that way, but like every single second of every single day. And it makes me think too of Sweet Nothing, from where it's I'm just too soft for all of this. Like, not everyone was made to do that, nor should they have to. But if you're a woman and that's what you're trying and you want to be successful, you kind of have to.
I love that you brought up Elizabeth I, because just bringing it back to historical royals, Elizabeth I was pretty beloved by the people, even though there were a lot of people that wanted to kill her and get her off the throne. But somebody else that I thought of was Marie Antoinette.
Yes, same. The screaming at the gates.
Yeah, people look at me like I'm a monster. Now they're screaming at the palace front gates, used to chant my name. They're screaming that they hate me. I mean, that, like, to me, has Marie Antoinette written all over, of like, off with her head. Like, you go from this very popular, beloved queen to like everyone down.
I went to Imelda Marcos and the Marcoses of the Philippines, which they obviously went way, they're not royalty, but stayed in power a very long time to be dictators, but we're beloved at the beginning. And I'm sorry, my reference is the movie for the musical Here Lies Love. So that's where my knowledge of the Marcoses comes from. Fun musical, very historical, not on Broadway anymore. Hey, I just have to be transparent. That's felt like
I love it so much.
History of the Marcoses, other than her love of shoes. But it's that same idea of I once was beloved and now y'all hate me. The difference being the Marcoses and Imelda Marcos, we know why they were hated. We know what they did. I don't know here what Taylor or this person did, other than power went to my head and I couldn't stop. Ones I love try to help. Like, there's not a clear description or identification of what has caused castles to crumble. Which
she does say, I held that grudge too long, or like I pushed it.
Men hold grudges all the time and they're just fine.
Yeah, power went to my head. I couldn't stop. I mean, she takes a lot of ownership in this song for sure.
But for what? And this is where I see this as a very like introspective song, and the idea that we're all so much harder on ourselves than anybody else ever would be. I think especially as women. I don't know about you. I'm sure I don't like there are so many times when I will do something or say something and then ruminate on it and then be like, oh my God, I hope that they're not offended, or I hope I didn't. And if I go back and say something, they're like, I didn't even notice that you said that. Like, so we take the things that we do or say very seriously and think that they have this big impact, when in reality, everybody's also just thinking of themselves and is not focused on it. And so I'm like, she says power went to my head, I held a grudge, but without knowing exactly what, without a description of holding a grudge for what type of power, it feels like this is somebody being really, really, really hard on themselves and not necessarily castles crumbling for like a justified reason. We don't know.
I know it starts with the Golden Age, and Golden Age is often like Elizabeth I. We talked about Marie Antoinette, but I also, like, as you were saying that, I'm looking at the lyric, I once was the great hope for a dynasty. Crowds would hang on my words. They trusted me. Faith was strong. I pushed it too far. And now I'm thinking of Anne Boleyn. I'm like, again, like thinking of like this, like hope for a dynasty, or like somebody who comes in with high hopes or whatever, and then becomes this like vilified witch character, and everybody's like chanting for your death. It does feel like in that particular comparison, like people did blame Anne Boleyn, and you're right, like women are scrutinized more. Like men could be the ones messing up, but then women are the ones that like take the fall for it. And even she is like, I let it get to my head. I took it too far. I pushed it. And I think
it's all her.
These are themes that you see like in those characters as well, of like,
for sure,
she had it all and she pushed it too far.
So for Lord of the Rings, you're on the point I was going to make anyway, so it's fine.
Go for it, Jen. Go for it.
I won't get too deep into it, because if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. But there is a character, Aragorn, who essentially is the heir of a particular throne of one of the kingdoms of men. And basically one of his ancestors is the reason why everything terrible is happening. His ancestor is the reason why their kingdom fell, why everything is terrible for them right now. And he has this like burden of like, that blood runs in my veins. I need to redeem this. I need to fix this. I need to make up for what happened. But like, it is still like, he still bears a lot of the guilt of that. And it's interesting to me too with this, because it's also quite natural for empires to fall. When you think about the span of history, a dynasty is great. No dynasty has survived forever. Dynasties end, empires fall, castles crumble. But what's interesting to me is to look at the song in the wider context and be like, well, this song is very much like, I locked myself away and I wasn't going to do anything because this is too much. But she still found a way forward.
It's like how Aragorn sends himself into exile. Like, he's like, I'm not going to even tempt myself.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'll either read or watch Lord of the Rings so I can understand these references.
You can watch them. They're fun to read, but
I'm upset that I'm not the one bringing up these references. I love all of it. But
it's self-imposed exile, but at the end of the day, he does redeem it. He does, but he's not redeeming the same empire. He's starting something new, which is what brings me back to Long Live. That moment of, it was the end of a era, but the start of an age.
End of a decade, but the start of an age.
The start of an age.
Such a beautiful line.
And that's, you know, at the end of the day, I think we see that that's what Taylor did. Even literally after this album, she goes into Red, where she's transitioning into a whole new genre.
But the other references, like, my castles crumbled overnight, I brought a gun to I brought
a knife to a gunfight.
Call it what you want.
Reputation.
Also, like, it's the reflection on this moment, but it's the other way. Like, she's like, call it what you want. Just like, call it what you want. Like, it was what it was. We came out on top. It's a redemption story.
Yeah, the Castles Crumbling is not the end of the story, but it is a key moment of feeling down, of feeling defeated, of feeling like there's nothing you can do, but the story's not over.
I love that you just connected this song to Reputation, because I feel like it might be a good time to go to our last song.
Yes.
What do you think?
Okay, I agree. So wrap on this one, and we will move on to my song.
Life gives you a transition.
I got to take it. I had to grab it.
Okay, so I chose King of My Heart, which was on Reputation, released in 2017. It's track 10 and was written by Taylor Swift, Max Martin, and Shellback. Also went quite literal with the title, and I will also say this is going to be our deep dive. So I will focus mostly on the royalty references in this song, but I'm sure we'll bring up royalty again in our deep dive because it's pretty woven into the song. So it's hard to talk about it and not talk about royalty. But high level, a couple of the references, she says, so the song starts off obviously perfectly fine, Live on My Own, but then we move into Salute to Me, I'm Your American Queen. And then we get King on All at Once, You Are the One I've Been Waiting For, King of My Heart, Body and Soul.
You missed, and we rule the kingdom inside my room.
Yes, and we rule the kingdom inside my room. I did not highlight that at the top. I highlighted it later in the song, which was not useful. So thank you. No, thank
You're welcome. Teamwork.
And those are really like the main things. So the main thing, there's some stuff we can get into with the royalty, but one thing I wanted to point out and just kind of like see if you guys agree with this. The main thing that I felt listening to this thinking about royalty, because obviously we didn't talk about Love Story because we have talked about Love Story before, but that has You'll Be the Prince and I'll Be the Princess.
There's a lot of songs that have royalty.
There is, yes.
Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince.
Yeah. We just have discussed a lot of them.
Well, and Taylor, our queen, is royalty.
She's
Herself knows it.
She is. Bow down.
But the idea that we're going from this You'll Be the Prince and I'll Be the Princess to saying someone is the king of my heart, body, and soul.
I see what you're doing there.
That I felt like this is very much I mean, let's be honest, it's also a very like sexual song. That's obviously what's happening. Like they're doing a Kingdom Inside My Room. Okay, wonder what that means.
Very R-rated lyric there.
But I don't know, like I'm kind of just curious.
Go there. Like, for what it's worth, I didn't go there, but okay.
Well, I'm overall curious for you guys with King of My Heart. Is it, I don't know, like what were your guys' original reactions to the song when it first came out? Or like, what do you think about it now? Because I had a whole journey with this song and I'm just kind of curious because it feels more grown up. But is that like, was that what you guys thought? Or I'm just curious.
So I see this song as, I mean, first of all, the opening, I'm perfectly fine. I live on my own. I made up my mind. I'm better off being alone. We met a few weeks ago. Now you try and calling me baby, like trying on clothes. So like as a single woman, I relate to the whole like, you know what? I'm good. I like my life. Things work. And this whole song is about that being disrupted. All of a sudden meeting someone who you're like, oh shit, this is somebody that I want to be part of my life. But it goes, so that's how I like saw the song initially. But in the obsessive listening and analyzing of the lyrics that I do for these things, it got a little less romantic in my mind because what she is saying, king of my heart, body, and soul, this person's the king of everything. Like that's a lot of power to give a person. Is this a good thing? So that's where I started to go. And I don't want to get to what I thought the purpose of the song was yet, unless we want to go there now.
Yeah, we'll do that next week. Teaser, you have to come back next week.
That's true. So I saw it initially as this, yep, I was single and now I've met someone and I'm like, oh my God, I love them. But when you actually get into the royalty lyrics and references, I think it's problematic that this person's the king of everything. And then there was also a lot of connection to royalty as it relates to luxury and wealth. And so that's the other place that I went with this song. And I thought a lot about our Marxist criticism episode, but I won't go into that yet.
So my reaction was, I kind of took it to a different place that we actually haven't talked about yet. I thought about chess. And the reason that
was on my list too. Yeah, it's really interesting with this song. Think about it.
Yeah, the reason I went to chess is this song is written from the perspective of a queen. I mean, she says, salute to me, you're American queen. I'm your American queen. So you know that song is written from the perspective of somebody who is comparing themselves to a queen. And then you think about like, okay, somebody of a power, a queen is like looking for a partner or a companion. And who are the people who are even suitable for that kind of role? That's where I think like in a lot of other songs, you get princes. You're still looking at royals, but you're looking at like potential candidates. And then you find the king. You're like, this person is worthy of the title of king. And I thought of chess because it's like checkmate. It's like your final. It's like the king and the queen are the two most powerful players on the board to some extent. I mean, debatable with the king, but like you have this pair.
The king's the most important. The queen's the most powerful.
Exactly.
Ain't that the truth?
And it's like when you say, or like, we're in checkers when you like make it to the other side and you're like, king me, like it's that selection of like recognizing that important person. And this, by saying king of my heart, body, and soul, it feels to me like a queen acknowledging that she has found the match. It was kind of like where my head went.
So it was really interesting to me. I went down a really weird deep hole of royalty and
your deep gut, your like rabbit holes of research for these things are my favorite. Keep going.
So it might be true in other cultures, but I kept looking it up, and at least every example I saw was Queen Elizabeth II, her husband was Philip. He was Prince Philip. However, Charles is king now, and Camilla is queen.
She's queen consort. She's queen consort, flag on the play, queen consort.
Technically, yes, but
your husband can't be king.
But your husband, if you are the
because kings are, a king by birth is different than a king by marriage.
Right, but even so, even if Elizabeth II had died first, Prince Philip wouldn't have done anything. However, there's a huge
He'd be the prince father. I mean, we had the queen mother.
He wouldn't have like anything, yeah. But there's a huge history of the queen consort effectively ruling the country, and people not saying queen consort, of people calling her just like the queen, like that. Queen that mother. Happens. Yeah, queen mother, dowager queen. However, they functionally ruled a lot. And I mean, some of it is we don't have a ton of examples, but
yeah.
Additionally, it is only really recent. So I was somehow on, I think it was Sweden's royal family. I was looking them up, and it was only, I think the current king did not marry a royal. And it was like within our lifetimes that they changed the rules that you didn't have to marry someone of royal blood.
There's a lot of rules that changed recently with royal families because they are so outdated. I mean, they used to be actual rulers and have political power and power, and now the monarchy is a figurehead.
Yeah, although they technically still like I told you guys on Slack of like the army pledges loyalty to the king or queen of England, and they technically have like veto power on stuff. So it is
but they don't use it.
But they could, which is fascinating that they're just
they don't use it.
Why do they still have it?
Yeah, to maintain the favor of the people, because they still otherwise because taxes get paid they benefit from taxes that get paid.
Well, people can revolt and say you have too much power. I think the idea these days that like one monarch has that much power is terrifying.
Yeah,
but you're right, Jen. Like the point is they still do have the power. They just
it's incredibly problematic and controversial, and also I'm an Anglophile and I love it. Like it's fascinating. I think the idea of a king and a queen or royal family are just, as Americans, so fascinating, but when you actually live in a country that has a royal family, it is seen as much more problematic than fascinating, and they're like, why are you Americans so interested?
If you come from a country that has been colonized.
Like part of the Commonwealth. Yeah, exactly.
So
if you're a Commonwealth country, right? It's so as I guess we're the ones that revolted and threw the tea in the water. Yeah. So now we just think it's interesting.
I think Americans just tend to identify with powerful players because we are also a powerful player. But
I try to be a powerful player. Anyway, king of my heart, body and soul.
So I can bring all of this context back to the
Taylor
lyrics.
Swift.
So all of this matters because if we look at it, the speaker is the American queen. Yes, we don't have royalty in America. However, the American
we have Taylor
queen,
and Beyonce.
It's an identity. However, this other person is the king of the speaker's heart, body, and soul. So that power dynamic is really interesting to me of, in theory, if this speaker is the queen and chooses her prince to become the king, he still isn't king. In no world is he actually the king. So this song is almost saying, okay, I'm the queen and I chose you, and you're not really the king of my people, but you can be the king of my heart. We can have a kingdom together here where we can rule together. Yet the speaker's royalty, the speaker's status exists outside of their kingdom of the room, which I thought was interesting.
I also got really excited because one thing that you did mention is that even though the queen's husband could never be king, the queen would give birth to the future king. And I just want to give a shout out to one of my friends, Siri, who dedicated this song when her son was born, because a different interpretation was like, I've waited all my life, heart, body, and soul. And then you get like an unconditional love.
I love that.
King of my heart.
I like that better.
I know, but when you said, you're like, the husband can never be king. And I was like, it's the son.
Is it the follow-up to Love Story where she got pregnant and now this song is to her now born son? Jody hates this interpretation so much.
There's always a child. One day.
Oh my God. I forgot we had that conversation. Until just now, which is why I'm making the faces that I am, because I forgot about that whole thing.
But But
yeah, I think you're right. It's like in the absence of being able to give that significant other, like the real title, you're saying like, even though you cannot be the ruler of my people, yeah, you're like
I can't give you any real power, but I love you.
Slash, I don't want to.
But it's like I allow you to have power over me, which
Yes.
in a way is even
worse.
bigger. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's worse. It's bigger.
I feel like but I mean, that's true in any long-term relationship, right? You are, even if you are independent, even if you are partners, at the end of the day, the vulnerability you give your partner is giving them power over you. Like, Chris can hurt me in a way no one else can,
Right.
because we are in a relationship like that.
You.
Heart, body, soul. It's like all three. Like, it's like, what else is there? You know, like,
exactly. There's nothing else. There's nothing else left.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, and again, we will deep dive this. She does have the line, now you're try on calling me baby, like trying on clothes. Just saying, baby's in this song. I'm still in the baby interpretation.
God help us all.
My brain went down 2 paths at the same time. That was not useful. But so there's more in here. But again, the idea of being king, we also talked about this. So interpretation 1 is someone has either earned or inherited the queen role and is saying, I'm going to choose you. You can be the king of the things we have together. But it's also, again, if you think about it, like, being king, being royal has multiple paths to it. Again, Lord of the Rings, we already talked about this, but like, Aragorn has the birthright to rule, but he still has to earn it. He still has to fight for it. He still has to prove to himself and his people that he is worthy of this. I was also thinking of Chronicles of Narnia. You're in with Tolkien. Let's go over to Lewis. But the Pevensey kids are prophesized to be the rulers of Narnia. And that's kind of
How
like...
did you remember their last name?
I grew up Christian in the Midwest.
Oh. Okay.
So this was my childhood.
I love that that's your answer.
I learned Narnia is Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, see, over my head. Over my head completely.
Same.
Aslan is Jesus. Spoiler alert. He comes back to life.
Oh, would you look at that?
Return of the King, also Lord of the Rings, by the way.
I can guarantee you that if I read that book right now, it would still go over my head.
So Lewis was making a metaphor for the Bible. Tolkien was inspired by his faith for a lot of the stuff he did, but it's not as much of a like almost one-to-one metaphor.
But this does go back to like a lot of the like the relationship between religion and royalty is.
That would be for our religion episode, which we'll do as well. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
But yeah, so you have these worlds where it's like your birthright or all of this stuff. But like I was saying, leading up to this, what's really interesting to me about this idea of saying, hey, you can be the king of my body, heart, and soul. Someone being crowned king does not mean they will be king until the day they die. It is something you continue to earn. It is something you continue to do. The castle's crumbling, another example of it. But this metaphor of king was super interesting to me. It's almost like the speaker is, I'm the American queen, I will crown you king, but that's not a guarantee. You have so many good examples of good kings, but I was also thinking of like Shakespeare and all of his, like you have King Lear, you have Richard III, you have really terrible kings who lose their thrones, who lose everything. So just because you were crowned does not mean you will get to keep that crown forever. It is more permanent than a democracy, but there is still an element of here's your crown, earn it. Your journey isn't over at your coronation. And in fact, actually your work begins at your coronation because now you have to maintain it. Now you have to continue earning it. And I was like, the more you think about the day-to-day realities of being royalty in real life, not just fantasy, is like, oh, this is like, it's an interesting metaphor of saying like, I will give you this crown. But like also, again, in the story, I'm the American queen. I have the bigger kingdom. So you got to keep earning this crown. Like this was not the birthright of this other person. This was an honor bestowed upon them. Which at that point, I think it is kind of romantic. I do think that is how relationships work, of saying like, I will trust you. I will
choose
give you incredible honor. Yeah. I choose you. But it's never
not a given.
You did it. Yeah. The castles can still crumble even if you have the crown.
I love that. Well, there's so much more I want to say about this song.
So much more.
So I think we should in our deep dive for next week.
All right.
So
that was a wrap on royalty. One more book recommendation that I thought of was Meg Cabot has a series or one book, I think, called Avalon High, where she reimagines the King Arthur legend, where King Arthur does come back, but it's in like a high school setting. It's a really fun like reimagining of the legend. It's more young adult. I would totally read it again as an adult though, but so I highly recommend it if that's just like sounds kind of fun.
Did we not mention The Crown at all?
Or the Range Rovers. We forgot to talk about Range Rovers.
I was going to talk about the Range Rovers in the next song, in the deep dive.
Okay.
Yeah, we will keep talking about
So
royalty,
if you'd like to know what we're talking about with the Range Rovers, tune in next week.
We'll see you then.
That's all we have for you today on AP Taylor Swift. Be sure to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on social at AP Taylor Swift to stay up to date, and join us next time as we overanalyze and deep dive into the next Taylor Swift song on AP Taylor Swift.